Welcome back to Sociology 101 lecture series. Today we are discussing conflict theory in sociology. We'll discuss its roots, development, and contemporary relevance. Conflict theory is a major sociological perspective that views society as a platform of competing interests where social groups are in constant struggle over scarce resources, power, and status. It contrasts sharply with functionalism, which emphasizes social harmony and stability. The roots of conflict theory can be traced back to the works of Karl Marx in the 19th century. Marx's analysis of capitalist societies laid the groundwork for understanding how economic inequalities and class struggles drive social change. Marx believed that the economic base, that is, the means and relation of production, shapes the superstructures like culture, institutions, and politics. He argued that economic system of capitalism inherently creates conflict between the bourgeoisie, people who owns the means of production, and proletariat, those who sell their labor. Central to Marx's theory is the concept of class struggle, which he saw as engine of historical development. Marx predicted that the inherent contradictions of capitalism would eventually lead to its downfall and rise of classless communist society. Marx also introduced the concept of alienation, where workers become disconnected from products of their labor and the labor process, their fellow workers, and their own humanity under capitalism. Now let's look at the development of conflict theory from Marx to modern thinkers. While Marx focused primarily on economic conflict, Max Weber expanded the theory by introducing the idea of multi-dimensional conflict. Weber argued that conflict also arises from difference in status, power, and political affiliation, and not just economic class. Weber emphasized that social stratification is not only about economic class but also involves power and prestige. This broadened the scope of conflict theory to include struggles over social status and political influence. Now let's look at the Frankfurt School and critical theory. The Frankfurt School, a group of German intellectuals in early 20th century, built on Marxist idea to develop critical theory. They focused on how culture and ideology serves as a tool of domination, maintaining the status quo and perpetuating social inequalities. Thinkers like Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer argued that the culture industry, that is, mass media and entertainment, manipulates the masses by promoting passive consumption and discouraging critical thinking, thus preventing revolutionary change. Now, let's discuss the C. Wright Mill's contribution to conflict theory. In mid 20th century, American sociologist C. Wright Mills introduced the concept of power elite, a small group of military, corporate, and political leaders who control and dominate key institutions in society. Mills argued that this elite group acts in its own interest and often at the expense of broader public. Mills also advocated for the use of sociological imagination, a way of thinking that connects personal experiences with larger social and historical forces, allowing individuals to see the broader patterns of power and inequality. Ralph Dahrendorf, a German sociologist, introduced the idea that conflict is not just about class struggles but also about authority relations. He argued that every society is divided into who have authority and those who don't, leading to a constant conflict of negotiation over power. Now, let's move to the contemporary developments and application of conflict theory. First, feminist theory and gender conflict. Feminist theorists have applied conflict theory to the analysis of gender relations, highlighting how patriarchal systems create and perpetuate gender inequalities. They argue that men, as a dominant group, have historically used power and resources to maintain control over women. Modern feminist theorists such as Kimberly Crenshaw have introduced the concept of intersectionality, which examines how various forms of oppressions based on race, gender, and class intersect and compound to create a unique experience of disadvantage. Second, race and ethnicity. W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the first sociologists to apply conflict theory to race relations, particularly in the context of United States. Du Bois argued that racial inequality is deeply embedded in the social and economic structures of society, leading to persistent conflict between racial groups. Du Bois introduced the concept of double consciousness, where African Americans experience a dual identity, seeing themselves both through their own eyes and through the lenses of society that devalues them. Third, contemporary Marxism and neo Marxist approaches. Contemporary Marxist and neo Marxist theorists continue to analyze the global capitalist system by focusing on how globalization has intensified class struggles on a global scale. They examine issues such as global inequality, exploitation in developing countries, and the concentration of wealth in the hands of transnational corporations. Antonio Gramsci's concept of cultural hegemony has been influential in understanding how dominant groups maintain power by shaping cultural norms and ideologies, making their dominance appear natural and inevitable. Fourth, conflict theory in modern sociology. Conflict theory remains a crucial framework for analyzing social movements, which are often driven by groups seeking to challenge and change existing power structures. The civil rights movement, feminist movements, and contemporary movements like Black Lives Matter are all examples of social movements rooted in conflict theory. In the contemporary world, conflict theory is frequently applied to study of economic inequality, particularly in context of growing gap between wealthy and the poor. Sociologists use conflict theory to examine how economic policies, corporate practices, and political decisions reinforce and exacerbate these inequalities. Conflict theory continues to be relevant in understanding the dynamics of power in politics. It is used to analyze how political institutions serve the interest of powerful groups, often at the expense of marginalized communities. Now, let's look at the enduring relevance of conflict theory. Conflict theory has evolved from Marx's original analysis of class struggle to encompass a wide range of social conflicts, including those based on race, gender, and power. Its focus on power dynamics and social inequalities makes it a vital tool for understanding the complexities of contemporary society. Despite criticism for its perceived focus on negativity and conflict, conflict theory provides a critical lens through which to view social change, highlighting how struggles for power and resources drive societal evolution. As society continues to change, conflict theory will likely to evolve to address new forms of inequality and oppression. Its adaptability and broad applicability ensure that it will remain a central perspective in sociological analysis. The future of conflict theory may involve a greater emphasis on global issues such as climate change, migration, and technological disruption, all of which have the potential to create new forms of social conflict and inequalities. So that's the end to our today's video. If you have any questions, suggestions, please make sure to comment below. Be with us on this journey and we'll learn more about sociological theories and concepts. Please make sure to subscribe the channel. It will definitely support.